Hello, welcome to Life Talk for October 22nd, 2009. No, 27th.
August.
August. I'm losing it.
We're jumping ahead 2 months.
Yeah. August 27th.
You're thinking ahead.
2019. And I'm joined by the usual suspects, my daughter Sheila and my assistant Rennie. Hello, Renee.
I wish
And-
it was that into fall. I love fall.
Not me.
The
I
cool
want this-
weather.
Not me.
I love fall.
I hate to see the winter coming.
Well,
It's
and yesterday was the hottest day here in Texas.
112.
Yeah. And of course, we're also joined by Ernie, the frilled-necked Republican.
Yeah, he likes hot weather though.
I don't think he cares much since he sits right here the whole time. Anyway, there's not a lot going on right now. We didn't have a whole lot of news stories to go over this particular week.
No.
But we did have somebody call and ask about how do we go about overturning Roe.
Right.
And we've had this question comes up occasionally, and it's obvious that there's a lot of misconceptions out here about Roe versus Wade.
Right.
And we've talked about this many times on Life Talk, and we'll talk about it many times more because this is something people need to understand.
And not only people focus on Roe versus Wade, but they forget about Doe versus Bolton.
Which is every bit as important. Yep. And what we need to make people understand, first off, let's let people understand what actually happened here with Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton. The Supreme Court ruled that a woman has a right to an abortion under the privacy clause of the Constitution. The word privacy is not in the Constitution. The word abortion is not in there. The word privacy is not in there.
Right.
They say it emanates from a penumbra. In other words, it kind of just glows from a shadow of the Constitution. And in there you find the right to privacy. Now, I don't deny that there is an unenumerated right to privacy in the Constitution, but the privacy to do what is the question to me.
The privacy to kill your child.
Privacy to kill your child, that's one thing. The
Well,
privacy
and they're talking about the 14th Amendment here.
Yeah, right. And what we need to understand is that you'll hear this very often. I heard it just either last night or night before last on Fox News. They were interviewing some pro-abort who was lying through her teeth, and she said that she supported the compromise in Roe. That Roe says there's no limit to the right of abortion in the first trimester. States can prohibit it in the second trimester, and it's illegal in the third trimester. She's lying through her teeth.
Yeah, there is no such thing.
There is no such thing. There's two decisions, Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton.
That's where Doe versus Bolton comes in, though.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
What they did was real clever. Roe versus Wade was the decision that, quote unquote, legalized abortion. It didn't really legalize abortion. It prevented the states from making it illegal,
Prohibiting.
prohibiting it. And they said that that protection of fetal life at a certain point has both logical and biological justifications, and a state can prohibit abortion in those cases, except when the abortion is necessary to protect the health of the mother.
And health includes mental health.
It includes everything.
Yeah.
Physical, mental, emotional.
They did not describe health in Roe versus Wade. The same day, they issued Doe versus Bolton.
Right.
And in Doe versus Bolton, they defined health. And health, and I remember it, quote, in the light of all factors, physical, emotional, psychological, familial, and the woman's age, relevant to the well-being of the patient, all may relate to health. That's their definition.
And so that opens up abortion for anyone in any
At
circumstance.
right up to the moment of birth. You cannot prohibit abortion
Right.
up to the moment of birth
Right.
because the definition of health is so broad. There's no circumstance under which a woman can be pregnant
Right.
that she can't claim that it affects her health.
And they wrote it that way on purpose because
Absolutely.
they knew that that's what would happen.
Right.
Right. And personhood is not in the amendments at all,
No.
period. And so that's the deciding factor here.
Right. And, well, they ruled that the unborn are not persons. They created this artificial distinction between a human being and a person. In reality, there is no distinction between a human being and a person. They said, yeah, they're human beings, but they're not persons. Well, there's no word in the English language for a human being that's not a person.
Yeah.
It's
So
just
ridiculous.
I mean, even pro-aborts use the word fetus, which is Latin derivative, and it's living.
Right.
You know?
it's a living human
Yeah,
being.
exactly.
But anyway, so what Roe versus Wade what they did was very clever. The Supreme Court knew exactly what they were doing. These people are pathologically evil. And I've said it a million times, and I'll continue to say it. Harry Blackmun, who wrote the Roe versus Wade decision, was every bit as evil as Adolf Hitler. He was no better than Adolf Hitler. And what these people did was they wrote Roe versus Wade to legalize abortion, but they knew the American people would not tolerate abortion being legal right up to the moment of birth for any reason whatsoever.
Right.
So they put restrictions in Roe versus Wade. And they knew that's the decision that would get all the attention.
Right.
Then they issued Doe versus Bolton at exactly the same moment.
Right.
And all the restrictions that were put in Roe versus Wade, Doe versus Bolton took out
Right.
with the definition of health. And they knew Doe wouldn't get the attention. And right now, I'll tell you, 90% of the American people, or 98% of them, if you said, what is Doe versus Bolton? I have no idea, never heard of it.
Well, and also a lot of people wouldn't even really know what is in Roe versus Wade.
Right.
Right. And to remind everybody that Norma McCorvey and Sandra Cana were both very much lied to in both of these cases.
And they were the plaintiffs. And Norma was the plaintiff in Roe, and Sandra was the plaintiff in Doe.
And it's important to point out that Norma, became pro-life.
Well, it's also important to point out that Sandra was always pro-life.
Right.
She was lied to. She didn't even know this case was about abortion. Her attorneys lied to her.
Yeah.
And the attorneys for Norma, they lied through their teeth. I don't know why they weren't disbarred.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Sandra had to sign a piece of paper and they told her it was one thing when in fact it was something else. And
She thought it was about a custody case or something.
Yeah. Because,
For a divorce or something.
Yes.
But anyway, the bottom line thing to remember is Roe put restrictions in so it would be palatable to the American people, and the Supreme Court knew that that was the decision that would get all the attention.
Right.
Doe took all the restrictions out from a legal standpoint, and here we are almost 50 years later, and the vast majority of the American people never heard of Doe versus Bolton. I'm going to tell you, the majority of pro-lifers never heard about Doe versus Bolton.
And it
And
was
they are
designed
hand
that
in
way.
hand. Yeah. And they are hand in hand. And like she said, it was designed that way.
It was intentionally designed this way.
And
This
plus,
was a scam.
And plus, talking about up to the abortion being legal up to the moment of birth. Well, babies are killed after failed abortions.
Even after birth.
Exactly.
So anyway, but here's what the important thing is. There's a misconception out there. People say, well, if Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton, if they made abortion legal, then taking them away would make abortion illegal.
Right.
And that's not the case. And when we come back after robots, we're going to talk about that aspect of Roe versus Wade and why just merely overturning Roe versus Wade won't necessarily accomplish anything. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make an argument that if we merely overturn Roe versus Wade, we may be actually taking a step backwards. And there's a good reason for that.
It would be detrimental.
It'd be devastating to the pro-life movement. And we're going to take a break for robots, and when we come back out of robots, we're going to talk about that particular issue.
In 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court legalized abortion nationwide. The decision is called Roe versus Wade, and those who defend it are known as robots. This is how they think.
Since a large number of pregnancies end in miscarriage, it is clear that God finds abortion acceptable. In fact, God actually does more abortions than anyone else in the world.
Sometimes it's hard to tell whether an argument made by the pro-choice mob is evil or just abysmally stupid. This is one of those cases. What these people expect the rest of us to ignore is the fact that there is a major distinction between a death that occurs naturally or by an act of God and one that is caused intentionally by another human being. For example, if a man is shot and killed while being robbed, that's a murder. But if a man dies from cancer or Alzheimer's or a heart attack, that's not a murder. And only a pure idiot would suggest that it is and that God is the one who murdered him. Of course, the most important thing to understand about this particular issue is that God is allowed to do a great number of things that you and I are not allowed to do. We do not judge his actions, he judges ours. And the refusal to accept that reality is the core of the pro-choice mindset. The truth is, these people who call themselves pro-choice do not simply reject God, they place themselves above God. In their rotted minds, the right to choose which babies get to live and which babies have to die belongs to man, not to God. Okay, we're back. You have a message there from someone?
I do, yeah. Andrea, she wants to know what Doe versus Bolton is. Will you explain what it says?
Okay, it's what's called a companion decision to Roe versus Wade, and it was issued the same day as Roe versus Wade, and it was basically a decision to carry the definition of health. And when I said this is a scam earlier, let me point something out. If the Supreme Court had taken the definition of health that's contained in Doe versus Bolton and just put it over into Roe versus Wade, they would not have had to even issue a finding in Doe versus Bolton. But the problem, had they done that, is everybody would have seen then that there are no restrictions on abortion. So they took the definition of health that they would have normally put in Roe and hid it over in Doe versus Bolton, knowing nobody would pay attention to it. And sure enough, they didn't. But Doe versus Bolton was nothing more than a vehicle to carry the definition of health. And it just further exemplifies that this was a complete scam.
Yeah.
But anyway, again, I talked a moment ago about the misconception that some people have, and a lot of people have this misconception, that overturning Roe will accomplish our objective. The issue is not overturning Roe. The issue is, how do you overturn it? In other words, what is the basis that the Supreme Court uses? And basically, they have two options. They can issue a ruling that says Roe was incorrectly decided because the Constitution is silent on abortion, and therefore this is a states' rights matter. And they say, okay, we wash our hands of it, it goes back to the states. The other way they could rule that Roe was incorrectly decided is by saying that the unborn child is a person.
Yes.
Now, if they say that for the purposes of the Constitution, the unborn child is a person, then this battle's over. And even Blackmun wrote in the decision that if the Supreme Court, or if the personhood of the unborn is ever established, the right to abortion collapses.
Right.
So it's already set in there.
Yes.
So if the Supreme Court comes out here and says, no, Roe is incorrectly decided because the unborn's a person, then this thing's over.
Right. And I want to point out, though, that a lot of abortion advocates even say that Roe versus Wade was unconstitutional, that there was no legality of it.
Yeah, they all say it's on fragile ground because of this. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the most radical, godless pro-abort that's ever sat on the Supreme Court, she says that Roe was incorrectly decided. But anyway, if they rule that it's a person, then it's over. But if the Supreme Court just comes out here and says, look, Roe was incorrectly decided in 1973 because the Constitution does not mention abortion, so this goes back to the states.
Right.
That is devastating for the unborn child.
That sure is.
Because this is not a states' rights issue. This is about federally.
Whether the unborn's a person.
Exactly.
And if it is, then the Constitution protects them.
Right.
But if it goes back to the states, here's the problem that we've got. You're looking at here right now at the landscape, and you can see clearly that if this goes back to the states, then some states would legalize abortion through all, like New York and California.
Yeah.
Right.
Colorado.
They're going to legalize abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy.
That's right.
And even after pregnancy.
Yeah.
And they're never going to change.
And they're not going to change. Some states, maybe Alabama, maybe Texas, are going to outlaw abortion altogether. The vast majority of states are going to do something in the middle. They're going to have some kind of middle ground approach. The problem with this is you cannot prevent people from crossing state lines.
That's right.
So let's say a woman is in Dallas and she's pregnant and Texas has outlawed abortion and protected the unborn. All she has to do is go to Colorado or New York or California and have her baby executed there.
or go to a state that has settled in the middle ground, and if she, meets a certain definition, then she can.
If she qualifies under the middle ground, then she just goes there.
And these abortion clinics will take a step forward and issue gas cards for these people to.
Oh,
That's already happening.
Yes, it
yes,
is.
it is already happening.
Yeah.
And I can see them setting up a fund
Yep.
and working with some airline
Airline, hotel.
and say we're going to have this kind of mobile abortion clinic. So it doesn't matter where you are. You can be in the most protective state in the country, Alabama, let's say, and if you want an abortion, just give us a call and we'll put you on the next airplane or the next train or bus or whatever.
It'll be a package deal, like you can just buy package deals for vacations.
So the point here is that because a states' rights approach cannot protect every baby in every state, it means it doesn't protect any baby in any state.
At all. Zero.
So it would actually change nothing. Every baby in America would still be vulnerable to abortion if it goes to a states' rights deal, as long as there's one state in the union that makes abortion legal.
And plus, it would leave it open for more people using Plan B and other
And it just
abortion bills.
it's a free for all. And I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised, really, that the pro-aborts haven't pushed a case to the Supreme Court that would overturn Roe on a states' rights basis, because that would be the best thing that ever happened to them.
Yeah,
I think ego is what keeps them from doing that.
yeah, maybe.
But the fact is, the only solution to this is that we have the unborn declared a person. That is, in the long term, that's the only solution to this. A states' rights argument destroys the pro-life movement.
Well, and Lynn McNair, she said getting rid of Roe is my main goal, but it seems that if you get rid of Doe, that would stop late-term abortions.
Well,
Which
you're not
would
going
be-
to get rid of Doe unless you get rid of Roe.
Yeah.
They're companion decisions.
And if you get rid of Roe, you won't necessarily get rid of Doe.
Well, if you get rid of Roe, Doe doesn't matter, it becomes moot. But the fact is, we're not here to protect some babies. We're here to protect them all. And the only way that's ever going to happen is by some sort of personhood ruling. And
Establishing.
we can't survive with this patchwork quilt where this state does this and this state does this and this state does this, unless you're going to pass a federal law that says a woman cannot cross the state line to have an abortion somewhere if it's illegal in her state. That's never going to happen. Matter of fact, that shouldn't happen. That would be unconstitutional.
It's not enough to overturn Roe versus Wade. We have to establish personhood, protect the right to life. And I mean, science is on the pro-life position on
Right. Oh,
our
yeah.
side.
Absolutely.
We're talking philosophical and legal here.
Right.
So why don't they follow science?
Well, they're not going to. The pro-aborts are never going to agree to that. But I think that the pro-life movement, and y'all know an article that I've got ready to go, and we're looking at making a video out of it. Matter of fact, we are going to make a video of some sort out of this, and we're working on it right now. I think it's time for the pro-life movement to swing for the fences.
Yes.
And I think some other things have happened, and I'm not going to go into details with it right now, but we're ready to fire this out there. Some things have happened in our country over the last few years that I think have laid the groundwork for how we can protect the unborn child. And I think it's time for us to quit nibbling around the edges and start swinging for the fences. 60 million dead babies is plenty. I don't
that's
care
too many.
how big a bloodlust you've got. That should be plenty of babies. But anyway, we've got to start getting serious about this.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people feel the same way. A lot of the pro-lifers were ready to just,
Let's
like you
do
say,
something.
swing for the fences.
Well, I mean, you have states that are passing pro-life legislation, but I mean, it's a back and forth. You have states that pass pro-life legislation, and then a few years later it changes, and a state over here passes pro-abortion
Right.
legislation, and
Right.
it just...
Misty says, do you mean stop being nice? Absolutely.
Well, I don't consider myself necessarily a nice person, but I have said for years we have been too nice about this. And do we believe that this is a Holocaust? Absolutely. It's the largest Holocaust in the history of the world.
Yep.
And how serious are we going to be about stopping it? And I think we've reached that point, and I've got a plan that I've laid out, and we've run it past some people that are very excited about it. Everybody we've run it past has been very excited about it. And so I'm getting ready to release this, and we're going to do a video on it, and I think it has unbelievable potential. But it's time for us to start being serious about this and doing something about it.
Yep.
But anything that overturns Roe, and again, let's make sure people understand, the issue is not whether we overturn Roe or not. The issue is the basis upon which we overturn it.
Yes.
If we overturn it on a states' rights basis, and by the way, you can go to the internet and read all of the law review articles that have been written by people on both sides of the issue, and overwhelmingly, almost exclusively, I've never seen one that didn't say this. Their argument is that Roe versus Wade will fall, and it will fall on a states' rights basis. If that happens, we're screwed.
So we have to prevent that from happening.
We have to, I think in effect, we're in a race to get the right case to the Supreme Court.
And the
against
right
Roe.
people.
In the right, well, yeah, what we're talking about, and we're releasing in this, I'm calling on us to create literally a constitutional crisis, a constitutional showdown. And what we need to ask ourselves, you say, well, that's a extreme step. How much are the unborn worth to us?
You're right. A lot.
And if we're not going to do it, the pro-aborts are going to do it.
So I think we're in a race to get the right case to the Supreme Court. And I think there's a way for us to force that case there in a way that the Supreme Court cannot refuse to hear it and create this constitutional showdown, this constitutional crisis. You know, I've taken some flack in the past. I wrote an article many, many years ago in which I said that America would not survive if we continued to do this. But the bigger issue is that we don't deserve to survive if we continue to do this. And a lot of people, even pro-lifers, thought that was a way too extreme a statement to say that we don't deserve to survive. Well, you tell me, if a country that God gave to us, we are now spitting in his face by killing the most precious thing that he creates. If we're spitting in his face by doing it, do we deserve to survive?
Well, and I think it was Pope John Paul II, I believe, that said a nation that kills its own children is a nation without hope.
Yep, that's right. May have been Mother Teresa.
Mother
Yeah.
Teresa.
I think
yeah.
Mother Teresa is the one that said that.
Yeah.
But John Paul II said some very
Yeah.
similar things.
Similar things.
And that's off on another subject. Even as
Yeah.
a non-Catholic, we all
Yeah.
agree that it's a tragedy that in just about a generation we've gone from John Paul II to this guy that we got today.
That's a whole different topic.
That's a whole different subject.
Oh, boy.
You know, in my lifetime, I think John Paul II was one of the greatest men that lived. But again, the church
Yeah.
has got some issues the Catholic Church has got some issues.
Not just the Catholic Church, but
The world in general.
Protestant Church too.
Oh, the Protestant Church
Yeah.
has got massive problems.
And, the church, both Protestant, Orthodox, Catholic, all, those that claim that they're Christians, they need to start stepping up.
Yep.
They're part of the problem.
That's right.
I guess Lynn wants to know if we're aware of the Harvard medical study that was released in 2015 that actually states that a baby is a person with constitutional rights, and I am not aware of that article.
I'm not aware of that article, but that's been stated in a lot of law review articles by people who are pro-life.
Yeah.
And again, they're right, because I challenge anyone. When I used to debate abortion, I used to ask these people, the pro-abortion on their side, give me a definition of a human being that you agree the unborn's a human being. You can't deny that. I mean, biologically, that's clear. Give me a definition of a human being that's not a person. What would keep a human being from not being a person?
And
they can't do it.
And I mean, even abortion doctors, like we have some books here that abortion doctors have written, and even they state that the unborn, that a fetus is a living human being. They admit it.
I'm sorry, it's just ridiculous that we're even having this conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, because an unborn is a human being,
Yeah.
Well-
is a person.
Who was it? We talked about the abortionist just on last week's show. And he says not only are they human beings, they're babies.
Yeah, they're
He
babies,
calls
and
them
I,
babies.
And I kill them, and I don't care, and
He said, "I
I'll
don't
kill
have a
them up
problem
to
with
late
it."
term, and I've also killed a lot of women in the process.
Right.
And injured.
and he doesn't care.
Stand-up guy right there.
You know, stand-up guy.
What is his name?
Yeah, Carhart.
Carhart, yeah.
Yeah, he says they're babies. There's no doubt about that. And he said my patients call them babies. I call them babies. That's what they are.
Yeah.
And we kill them.
Call it for what it is.
No problem. At least he's honest.
Yeah.
He's different than the rest of them.
Yeah.
They dance all around it. Anyway, y'all got anything else?
Nothing else. Just we appreciate the
Letter.
the letter. Yeah, the email
Email.
that we got. Thank you.
This one was from the original one we got was from a woman named Lisa in
Lisa,
Ohio.
yeah.
And you're going to contact her.
I am.
And
So
we're
she
gonna-
can get a mug.
So she can get her free mug.
Yes.
And anybody else that send us an idea, and send it to you.
Send it to me. Yep.
'Cause you're the
Email,
gargoyle.
call, whatever.
You're the Life Dynamics gargoyle, so
Yes.
you
Yes.
police all that stuff.
And Nancy Meisner, she sends us lots of comments, which we really do appreciate. We keep up with them all.
And we've sent her mugs, have we not?
Yes, we have.
Okay, good. We'll keep Nancy filled up with mugs. And we'll make sure Lisa gets one. And if you send in a suggestion for a show that we use here, we will send you one too. That's it.
That's it.
Until next Tuesday, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how this killing will stop. We'll see you next week.